had this really intense, mean look. His jaw was clenched. He looked angry. He was looking down at her, which really disturbed me. And his eyes, which were these beautiful blue eyes, had gone coal black. And I didn't even recognize him. I thought, who is this? And so I yelled out to him. Dancing around, and I had turned around to put on another record that was a little bit slower. And when I turned back, he was doing a slow dance with Margie, and she had her head leaned against his shoulder. And I looked at him, and I didn't even recognize him, Piers. He had this really intense, mean look. His jaw was clenched. He looked angry. He was looking down at her, which really disturbed me. And his eyes, which were these beautiful blue eyes, had gone coal black. And I didn't even recognize him. I thought, who is this? And so I yelled out to him over the music. I said, hey, Ted, are you okay? Is something wrong? And finally, I stopped the record and yelled again. And then he snapped out of it at that point. And Margie looked up at him, wondering what was going on. And then the mask dropped, and he went right back to his normal self. And then I was just thought, well, that was weird, but you don't think that person's a serial killer at that moment. But the weird thing that happened right at that second was he said, I've got to go. And he just turned around and left right at that moment. I have no idea where he went after that.
I mean, the really chilling part of this is that this happened just months before his first known murder in 1974, and it was your roommate's good friend, Linda Ann Healy, who was his first known murdered victim. You knew her, you'd met her. Well, there was a pivotal moment when you picked him up from jail after his arrest and stopped in a bookstore, and you noticed that he was kind of lapping up attention from members of the public because he'd become kind of infamous. And you write in the book, Ted's arms were outstretched wide, a street corner messiah, and he was slowly turning in a circle. From his smiling lips, he chanted over and over, projecting for all to hear, I'm Ted Bundy, I'm Ted Bundy, I'm Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
I mean, was that the moment? You know, you said in the book, this is the image that haunts me the most. The image 50 years later makes your heart rate surge, because was that the moment when you realized it was him?
Yes, and it still gives me chills now just hearing you read that section from the book. I noticed a bunch of people running down to the corner because I was finishing up at the bookstore, and I got a terrible feeling in my stomach that something was going on. And so I went down there, and as the crowds parted, in the center of the crowd was my cousin, Ted Bundy, doing just as you described, standing there with his arms outstretched, turning like he was a messiah, actually acting proud that he was Ted Bundy. And that's the moment that I realized that he wasn't who I thought he was at all.
And you saw the kind of same jet black eyes, the expression that you'd seen when he was dancing with Margie that time.
Yeah, that's right. And it was as if he had transformed into somebody else. He let the mask down during that time period, and he wasn't the Ted that I knew. He was somebody else. And Piers, I ran up to him, I slapped my hand over his mouth to shut him up, and grabbed him and pulled him off that corner and hauled him back to my car and threw him in there because I was so appalled. And then I get in the car and I go, oh my God, I'm alone with this guy. And I drove him home afterwards. And I was absolutely terrified because sitting in my car was not my cousin. Sitting in my car was somebody completely different. And I turned and looked towards him, Piers, and he was just smiling at me. And I thought, oh my God, I hope I make it.